What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art Check. So today I'm going to be showing you how to draw some flowers, but more specifically these are going to be hollyhocks, which are flowers that will tend to grow on a vine. I've always been pretty fond of them. I don't think I've ever actually had the chance of seeing them, but how I got into them was I had a set of Derwent Inktense pencils. I believe that's the one, or it's one of the Derwent sets. And within them, there's a little like flyer or a brochure, kind of demonstrating the product and things like that, and also showing you different products. And it had a drawing done of some hollyhocks, and they were really cool looking. So I've always kind of enjoyed them ever since, so that's how I got into those. So what I've done already, I was going to practice this a bit, just kind of get a little rough sketch done, but I feel confident enough that I can do this just with what I have here. So I was going to kind of finish this one off just to kind of see how I did, but I decided to just kind of go for it, I guess. I started to lay down where things would be placed, and I just felt that, okay, I'm seeing where this is going, and I think that I could replicate what's going on in the reference photo. So I know a lot of people will ask me if I'm using reference or not. For this one, yes I am, but for a lot of the drawings done on my channel, more times than not, I probably won't use a reference. I just have a lot of fun drawing from my head. A lot of imagination. Okay, so during my Spring Meadow series, I was asked quite a bit if I recommend the grid method. And to be honest, that was the first time I really implemented the grid method in a video and within my own drawings. I've never really done that at all before, so it was something very, very new for me as well. So as to whether or not I recommend it, it's one of those things that I felt that helped. That's why I'm doing it again here. It helps with the accuracy of laying out details within your drawing. So my best advice is to try it, and if it works with you, then go for it. But if you find that it doesn't really help with what you're doing, then not so much. Maybe there's something else down the road that will help you more. But the biggest thing I noticed with it is if I didn't do it, I would have drawn this main flower here much larger. So that's the big thing that I noticed right away. So just to keep that in mind, I would have drawn things out of proportion really quickly. I still have that problem myself. I'll draw things well out of proportion and make things larger than they should be, but that's normal. Anything that you see as important within a reference image or a drawing, anything that you really enjoy looking at or something, you'll tend to draw that larger just to show significance. I mean, it's not something that you consciously do, it's just what happens. So I've noticed it with other people's work. It's just what happens. So using a grid kind of resets the playing fields and helps with the accuracy of the work. But the grid kind of, I know there's some people that have like a scientific way of doing it. My grids will be different per drawing. So for this one, I just the reference image has these flowers right smack in the middle of the picture, so I divided it into thirds because I knew that they're going to be in the middle, and then based off that I could easily place where things were going to go. So it just really helps with the layout. Alright, so let me talk about the drawing at hand and what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to create a diffused background. So it's going to be kind of similar to the way I do my clouds almost, whereas I'm just going to lay down a lot of layers of pencil, then go and use a blending stump and just kind of smooth everything out. Now, here's another question I get asked quite often. So, if you don't have a blending stump, what else can you use? A lot of people will just go immediately and use their fingers for it, which will work. Just have to be careful, because if your hands have a lot of oils in them, and getting that oil on your drawing will, you will not have a fun day. Believe me, that's what happened to me quite a bit. So, if you don't have a blending stump, you can use a Q-tip. One of those. You can even use like a paper towel or some sort of cloth. If you have you probably, a lot of you, I'm sure, probably have a couple spare rags here and there. I know, in the closet I got a whole stack of them. Although I don't use it for drawing, it's just extra stuff that we have around that we don't really need. Just one of those things. But those will work. Paintbrushes, I know that some people will use it. I've never really had much luck, or actually I've really never tried paintbrushes, so I'm not really one to say whether or not it'll work or not. I'll just have to leave that one up for you to decide if that's going to work or not. So I'm just making one side nice and dark, just to kind of give it a nice transition. I'm just kind of working some up in here. Now when I blend this out, I kind of want to keep it half blended, I guess is a good word to say. I want to blend everything out, but I don't want to blend it all together. So I want to create a lot of uneven tones, I guess you could say, with it. So I'll demonstrate what I am talking about. So usually when I blend, I'll work the blending step in circles. It helps to really smooth everything out. But I'm going to I'm just not going to blend everything in one even tone. I want to keep everything slightly different. That way there's variation within the background here. What it's going to do, it's going to make it look like it's out of focus, from like a camera effect, where you zoom out of focus or something. That's what it's going to do. Then while I'm doing this, I'm also going to erase these lines that I made. It's the only bad thing about making a grid is if you use a sharp pencil. I noticed it with my Spring Meadow one. If you use a sharp pencil, you'll notice it in the background. Even though you erase it, you'll still see that line because you make an indentation in the paper. So I'll just have to be more careful, and I just want to let you all know so that way you could be a bit more conscious of it as well. Just gotta be careful with it. You don't want to you make those lines too prominent, because then you dent the paper, and it's bad things tend to happen. But it's okay. Alright, and usually when you start blending over it, it kind of hides all of it anyway, so we'll be okay. Now, as you can probably see, I have a few things sketched out on here, and I'm probably going to be losing some of it during this process. So, I mean, that's not too big of a deal. I can always re-add in a lot of the stuff that I lost. That's why I'm doing this first. So by doing this first, everything on this blended layer is going to be way, way in the background. There's not going to be anything further back than this. So this is the playing field. And then everything else that gets added is going to be placed on top of this. So it just makes it a lot easier than having a fully detailed work of art and then trying to put a background around it. That makes for a pain. I'm sure a lot of you have tried that. I'm guilty of it myself. I've done that, and it it makes you wish you thought things out better. Just put it like that. I can tell already this is probably going to be one of those lengthy videos, but that's okay. I know a lot of you have let me know that you don't mind, so hopefully that'll stay true. I don't see a huge deal with having a longer video myself. I know I was very, very conscious of it, mainly because I know that a lot of people have things to do. I know I do. I'm a full-time student and I go crazy every week, weekly tests and everything. But that's just everyone's got their own things that they're dealing with every week. So I know the time can be very hard to come by sometimes. But when it comes to doing something that's worthwhile and learning something, I mean, knowledge is power. So I mean, if you're sitting and learning something that you really care about and want to know and learn, then I think you're going to be more devoted to spending the time towards it. So let me get back into the actual drawing here. So I'm using an HB. I'm just going to kind of reassess what was lost here and kind of regain some ground. So I'm just kind of gaining back some of the leaves that I lost. But let's get into it. I'm going to start with this flower. So now the middle of it, I want to keep relatively intact. It's just going to be the inner part that's going to be very dark. I'm deciding whether or not I should probably get a darker pencil. So, alright, so I'm going to use a 2B inside this flower portion here. And let me zoom in so that way you can get a nice good idea of what's going on. Losing my reference photo there. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of work in a radial fashion where I'm just working from the center out. And this is probably going to be a multi-part process of laying down pencil and then using the blending stump. Just like this. And just kind of diffusing some of that. But then, of course, you're going to have to go back in again and just reinforce some of that. I want some areas to be really potent and dark, and some areas to just really blend out nice. So I might have to come back to this and kind of work everything together, but it's going to take a bit of kind of going back and forth, playing around with different things, seeing how they work. We get a little blending around the edge of the flower here as well. Now this goes up and around. A good general tip is if you're working from reference, you really want to keep looking at your reference about every 5 seconds or so. It's just a very good rule of thumb. That way you're constantly observing what is happening in your reference while working in those details. Alright, so I just have to erase here just a little bit. Now, I'm not sure how polished I'm going to make this one. Yeah, because this is just as much of an experiment for me as it is probably for a lot of you. But I've drawn flowers in the past, so I have somewhat of an idea of how to go about it. But practice does help. And just being familiar with what you're working with is a pretty big deal, so it's just a good idea. Alright, so this kind of comes down and around. So this is pretty rough pencil work at the moment. And I'm probably going to move on to the next area with it looking like this, just to kind of see where everything else is at and then work accordingly. I just kind of want to smooth things out. There we go, that's starting to come along. So this background's a little rough. I can smooth that out a little bit more later on. Alright, so see, that's the general idea. Let me zoom back out a bit. Alright. So I also want to establish this stem that they're all hanging out on. Just like that. I've also got a lot of these leaves hanging out here. This leaf is going to be underneath this flower here, so just got to make this fairly dark. See, it's kind of poking out there. But then the shadow's going to have to end. And there's going to be a pretty strong highlight as a result. This is just not working. See, by looking back at the reference photo, I realized that this is all part of the flower right here. This is like the under part. If the petal was coming up and around like this, and this is the under part of it. It kind of has an odd shape to it, and then the leaf being right here, so just fixing it a little bit like that. Alright, so I'm also going to kind of establish a little bit right here. This is going to be mainly an under portion of a leaf. And that's going to need a lot of blending. So leaves are pretty smooth as far as texture is concerned, so the natural texture that a 2B pencil leaves off is a bit strong, I feel, for this. So that's why I'm blending a lot of this out. And I'm probably going to have to go back in and just put a bit of that outer leaf texture back in. So I'm just kind of wiggling my pencil about, and that's what's creating that texture, or that pattern or design, whichever you prefer to call it. Alright, so this leaf here is kind of hanging out underneath that one, so there's going to be some shadow going on right here because of that. But the rest of it is going to be pretty much just hanging out in the sun, so it's going to be pretty heavily lit. And here's an under portion of the leaf right about here. So also a little bit more of an under portion right there. I just have to reestablish some of what was lost. Alright, so let's work on this larger flower here. Let me zoom in. That way you can all get an idea of what's going on. So I'm still using the 2B. I've pretty much been using it the whole time so far. Now again, I'm going to be working in this radial pattern, but I want to establish a fairly dark portion in here. That's mainly what it's going to be in here. So I'm just going to kind of build up a tone in here. Now it's just going to go back over it again, just to kind of make it a little bit darker. So this is going to be the darkest portion of the flower. So it's caught up in a lot of shadow, so that's why the inner portion here is fairly dark. And then from here, just got to work the shadow out. But the texture of the flower as well is going to be in effect here. So we're kind of taking care of two things at once. That is the shadow and the texture of the leaf, not the flower. Let's start mixing up my terminology here. And what I like to do is rotate the pencil until you get a sharp point on it, and just create some darker lines that kind of emerge from the flower. Kind of helps with the overall feel of it. Makes it feel a bit more natural. Alright, so I'm just going to take the blending stump, and I'm going to carry it all the way to the outer portion of the flower here. Now, part of this leaf is flowing over it, so I'm just going to avoid that area. And one thing I'm going to do later on in this drawing, you can probably see I have a leaf. When I zoom back out, you'll see that I have a leaf flowing out of the picture scene. I'm going to have a couple elements flowing out of the picture scene here, just to kind of do something a little bit different. I always liked how some people would do that. Whatever it is that they draw, they'll draw it within a confined area and just have some things just kind of peeking out of the picture area. I always thought that looked cool, so I'm going to do that with this. So one thing I'm also doing is I'm not fully blending this outer portion here. I'm just kind of carrying it out, because you can see how it's kind of creating a bit of a dynamic texture there. That's also helping with the way that the flower is portrayed within the reference photo as well. So just another one of those things that helps. Now I just kind of want to go around the flower and just kind of create a bit of a pencil layering there, and then blend that out just to kind of decipher it between that and the background, which will just sort of help to bring it out a bit. Alright, and then use the blending stump and just kind of grab that and bring it back down. Just kind of helps to make it stand out a bit more. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that the outer portion of the flower is getting a bit dark, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to help make it stand out a bit. But I'm just going to have to go back in to this part and just make it a little bit darker. Let's grab a 4B. Let's get really dark. And just make this a bit darker. So there we go. Now it's starting to really show some of that shadow in here. I'm still working in that radial pattern. You want to keep that going. It's going to really help. Okay, so when blending this time, I'm not going to do it so much, just a little bit. But I'm also going to use my eraser and just kind of make some highlights, and I'll show you. So the main amount of my highlights are just going to be in this middle portion of the leaf. There I go again. I'm calling it a leaf when it's a flower. I don't know why I do that. It's just one of those things. But anyway. I'm still going around in that radial pattern. Just kind of bringing out some highlights. Just giving it a bit more dynamics. Just like that. That's always a good idea to have a paintbrush around. I always use a fan brush just to kind of clear everything out. So the last thing I want to do in here is just kind of add a bit of texture in here. Not too much though. Just like that. And just do just a touch of blending in there. Just like that. So I still want to have that area very bright, but not like overly bright. Oh, wrong way. Alright, so you can see how that's turning out. I'm also going to just go back into this one really quick. Now that I've established this one, go back in with a 4B on this one and just do the same thing again, kind of reestablish my darker areas. Just like that. And then just use the blending stump to kind of diffuse that just a little bit. Just like that. Alrighty, so we're making some good progress here. It's coming out pretty good. I'm enjoying it. Just let me know if you're enjoying it as well. I'm not too familiar with drawing flowers, but on the rare occasion when I do draw flowers, I tend to enjoy it. So I also like to simplify them a bit as well. Now, a lot of flowers have a lot of leaves growing around them, and that will overwhelm me. There's a lot of detail and texture that's going on there, so I'll just kind of tend to weed out a lot of that and sort of go for my own thing. Alright, so this portion of the leaf is underneath the flower, so I'm going to sort of create just a bit of shadow right there. So the light's kind of coming in this way. So that's just kind of what I'm keeping in mind. Alright, so this leaf, here's my blending stump. Alright, so I'm going to blend this out. So this will give you a good idea how I'm doing the leaves. So I'm just basically laying down some pencil, gonna blend it out. Just like that. Then I'll go with my eraser, just kind of establish that middle line that flows down. Then just take my pencil and just kind of go along that and just kind of bring it out. See what that does right there? Just gives it a nice effect. Then you can also kind of create some of those lines that flow out from it as well. And just use the pencil and just create a line right along where that highlight is. Just like that. That's all you really have to do. And I'll do the same thing for this one. So I have switched back to a 2B pencil. I was using the 4B for the inner part of the flower. I've since switched back. So I'm just going to be doing the same thing again with this one, but I'm going to have this one flowing off the page just to kind of do something a little bit different. Alright, so now I just got to blend it out. Now this is also going to be underneath the flower a little bit, so I just want to make that one a bit darker. Alright, and I'll show you how I did the veins of the leaf again. So this one I'm going to have just a bit curved. So if you have a sharp eraser, it really makes a difference. So there's the line, the eraser line it is. And then just kind of follow along with your pencil, just like that. The highlight is a bit thick on that one, so you can just kind of go back in and kind of diffuse it just a little bit, just like that. Same with this line. Okay, that one didn't come out as well. There we go. Sometimes it just doesn't come out right the first time. Alright, so I'll create some of those lines coming out. And just kind of lightly follow them with my pencil. And that's what you're left with. Now I'm also going to go around the edge. I'm not going to press too hard, but just to kind of reestablish the edge of the leaves here. Just like that. Same with this one. So they're kind of getting lost a bit with the background, so I just want to make sure that they don't get lost. Just like that. Alright, so this one, what to do with this one? This one, we're kind of looking at the, actually this one we're looking at the underside of the leaf. This one is just kind of chilling in the sun. I think this one is doing okay as it is. Just going to just kind of reestablish the edge of it. Same with this one. And I'm also going to sort of do my eraser pattern there. Create a line. It's a very, very repetitive process sometimes with creating certain things. But it's all good. Alright, so I just have a few more leaves up at the top portion of this. And these are much smaller. And this is going to be like a flower bud, but there's not going to be too much detail there that's going to indicate that. I don't want to draw too much attention up here, but I just want to have this stuff. Now, I'm also going to have the vine sort of come down here as well. Just like that. Just to kind of carry it through. Alright, so then I got this leaf to work on. Another small leaf that's hanging out right here. Now, like I said, I'm not going to do too much with this. Just want to kind of keep it basic. Just like that. Nothing too crazy. But I would like to just sort of go around it a bit, just to kind of establish where it's sitting. Same with this one. And I will also kind of create some line texture going on in here, but nothing too much, just like that. Alright, now I just want to kind of smooth out the stem just a little bit. Actually, if you want to get really crazy, kind of carry the stem up a bit, like that. Same it down here. And just kind of have it end just like that. Just to add a bit of variety. And I just need to establish the edge of this leaf again. There we go. Just to kind of have things flow out of the drawing pane. But I'm going to leave it off at this. I think that this came out pretty well. So here I said I'm going to end it off at this, and I picked up the pencil again. So I'm fairly pleased with how this turned out. I wasn't too sure. It's been a while since I've tried a flower drawing, but I think that this one came out pretty well. So there's a little bit of a leaf here that I missed, but nothing to really worry about. So I'll do the quick line work that goes into this leaf and just kind of leave it at that. Kind of blend this just a little bit. But I'm going to leave it like that. I hope you all enjoy this one. If you did, it always helps if you leave a thumbs up. I always do appreciate it. And leave a comment as to what you thought about it. And I really thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all later. Take care, everyone.